Stand, 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 stand. Stand and sing of Zambia, proud and free, land of work and joy in unity, victors in the struggle for the right. We've won freedom's fight, oh, one strong and free. Bonse tulivana b'Afrika, uwasena minwa na lesa, nomba bonse twendele pamo, twalilubula, twikatane bonse. Jinga jomwen chotulilila, mbule mualumu no mujisi, mbulizi wazembwa uluga Zambia omubotu tonse tuswangane. Timtamande Mungu watu adalize Zambia, Zambia omasuka pasipande bendera yatu, pasipande bendera yatu Zambia, timtamande ugozi ipavu.
Praise be to God.
Praise be, praise be.
Bless our great nation.
Zambia, Zambia, free men we stand under the flag of our land. Zambia, praise to thee, oh, one strong and free.
It is said, the highest tribute to the dead is not grief but gratitude. Born a proud son of Chinsali, Northern Rhodesia, your heart was one that always sung freedom and unity for the people of Zambia. For generations gone and generations yet to come, TIYENDE, PAMODZI. In the fight against apartheid and colonial rule, when bravery and courage were rare, when the whip of the oppressor bruised the bare melanin skin of our forefathers, you dared speak for the liberation of Central and Southern Africa. Amongst the Tembu tribe of South Africa, stories of your bravery will forever be heard, for there you broke bread with ANC's Nelson Mandela, making Zambia the harbor for Africa's fight for freedom. Over the Mount Nyangeni of Zimbabwe, your generosity remains a testament among ZANU's Robert Mugabe and ZAPU's Joshua Nkomo. Past the Kunene River of Namibia to the Swapo, the Coral Islands of Mozambique to the Frelimo, the Zanzibar shores of Tanzania, through the Kalahari Desert of Botswana, into the Tundavala Fisia of Angola to the MPLA, your song has been heard by all our neighbors. TIYENDE, PAMODZI. Your tune had an irreplaceable rhythm in the pitch for Southern Africa's quest for freedom. At high cost to you and Mother Zambia, you sang TIYENDE, PAMODZI, MUTIMA, UMO. For you believed that Zambia's freedom would be meaningless if its neighbors could not be liberated. So with wits as mighty as the Zambian eagle, you soared and the melody of Ubuntu marched into our homeland, where you united the people of Zambia. 72 tribes became one Zambia, one nation, one people. TIYENDE, PAMODZI, MUTIMA, UMO. When the time to relinquish power to the next generation came, though unpopular of African leaders at the time, you willingly decided to do what was right, and in came Dr. Frederick Chiluba. When HIV sought to cripple the nation, you fought back, for you were born and died a fighter, and in us left the wheel of fire to to blind justice, hang corruption, and break the shackles of greed and ignorance. And now, at 97, this proud old flag soars higher than ever before, proud and free for all to see, as you go to your new homeland across the shore.
He's gone. He's gone gently into that good night as old age banged and raged at the close of day we rage. We rage today as a nation against the dying of our night in the light of day. He was the last wave of our lakes and seas, but now they are still and the nation is still. So come with me in the silence of night. Come with me in the speaking silence of a giant who has fallen, cause yes, we'll miss him. We'll miss him in the weeping of the rain. We'll miss him in the scorching of the African sun. We'll miss him in the freezing days. We'll miss him in the spring times. And yes, we'll miss him every 24th October, a door he opened for Zambia's rest. I recall grandma's stories about him, stories of his strong deeds that had danced in the streets of Zambia, how he caught and sang our slavery in flight, how his words forked not, spake only peace, truth, and unity. But today, he's gone into that good night. And we stand stricken, remembering him, even in places where his foot did not step or his face shone, we remember him. And that's why we will not look for him at the graveyards or look for him at his deathbed, because he will not be there. He will be on every tongue of every Zambian. He will be in every street of every city. He will be in every place his foot did not step. He will be in our memories as we remember him. Our founding father has gone into that good night, but his deeds are awake every morning.
Your life and legacy forms the foundations that we, the younger generations, build on in the strive to develop our nation. We take pride in the melanin of our skin, holding true that there is a great evil in this world, but it has no color. And no matter how we slice it, hate's greatest victim is always the person that harbors it. So we choose to love. For the torch is in our hands now. Our commitment is to hold fast these virtues that mold us. Love, respect for all man despite differences in opinions and beliefs, for we all bleed the same. To honor our founding father, I pray that we never forsake our culture of oneness, that we forever live by what's right under God, not what's popular, that the truth never be dictated by the corrupt narrative of a few. So if ever the sun shines,
if ever the Zambezi River flows,
if ever the fields yield,
if ever the salt of Ingombe Ilede be tested,
if ever the Mosi Otunya thunders,
if ever the eagle flies,
and if ever our anthem is sung, may we remember your great courage, sacrifice, and love.
Farewell, gallant son of Africa. You lived and died singing the tune of unity and liberty. TIYENDE, PAMODZI, MUTIMA, Umo.
Obadwa ndikukula mu Zambia, malo kumlira ndimtendere, kwa onse osakila malo azapeza ukulu, inga susani nkawizina, koma nkondo yebesina yonero, kakale zonse zitazipitamo, Tigai, One Zambia, One Nation, Kwambuye.
My Zambia, my identity. It is indeed Kirocham. It is indeed Kirocham. My Zambia, my identity. It is indeed Kirocham. It is indeed Kirocham.
Muzibane, Muzibane, Tiyibane, Twishibane, Tumanyane, Tuyukane, Tulibwashane, Twishibane.
Mulungu watidalisa ndicholinga. Izitiri nazo simozitama ai. Tisazi embwerere kose. Uyu mtere nimwa chifundo cha mbuye. Tikayangana maingo ena. Oh, tawi zonse ndichizo ndindi nkondo. Ngakale zonse tizipita mwese. Tikali One Zambia mumaso ambuye. My Zambia, my identity. It is indeed Kirocham. It is indeed Kirocham. My Zambia, my identity. It is indeed Kirocham. It is indeed Kirocham.
Muzibane, Muzibane, Tiyibane, Twishibane, Tumanyane, Tuyukane, Tulibwashane, Twishibane. Ilichisanzo kumaiko ena, isedaliso kwa ena onse. Anondi malo atu opumulilapo. Tisambe manyazi ndizikolatu. My Zambia, yamuka ndikuwala, yafika ntawi yako. Kambu ya mulungu ilipaiwe. My Zambia, yamuka ndikuwala, yafika ntawi yako. Kambu ya mulungu ilipaiwe.
My Zambia, my identity. It is indeed Kirocham. It is indeed Kirocham. My Zambia, my identity. It is indeed Kirocham. It is indeed Kirocham.
Muzibane, 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 Tiyibane, Twishibane, Twishibane, Tumanyane, Tumanyane, Tuyukane, Tulibwashane, Twishibane, Twishibane.
Your Excellency, the first Republican President of the Republic of Zambia, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, Kanabesa, Batata, twamupokelela nensansa ishikalamba sana sana mwishina ili akwalesa mkulu tata n'omwana n'omupashi wa mushilo tuletila kuliba kateka wesu tata mwaiseni pomkwai mwaiseni nakapundu
You are the hero. commend you for your braveness. You deserve to be honored.
Oh, you deserve
to be honored. Dr. Kaunda, you are the hero. You are the hero of our nation. We commend you for your braveness. You deserve to be honored.
Oh, you deserve
to be honored.
Oh, you are the hero.
You are the hero. You are the hero of our nation.
Oh, you are the hero.
You are the hero.
You deserve
to be honored.
Oh, you deserve
to be honored.
Oh, you are the hero.
You are the hero. You are the hero of our nation.
Oh, you are the hero.
You are the hero.
You deserve
to be honored.
Oh, you deserve
to be honored. You are the pillar. You are the pillar of our nation. We salute you for your braveness. You deserve to be honored.
Oh, you deserve
to be honored. You are the pillar. You are
Is this the anticlimax of a generation? Is this a smother of the last flame that had burnt this nation into existence by our father, Dr. Kenneth David Kaunda? Maybe he was not, as he is subjectively remembered for, a father of a nation, but maybe he was the nation. Ever so often we become what we fight for, what we are ready to die for, what our dreams learn to perceive as ultimate reality. And KK, everything about him was Zambia. He was the resurrection of a once incarcerated northern Rhodesia. And whilst in his old age, we can argue of his effectiveness to the nation as we reminisce on the shadows of what was a gallant, energetic and pragmatic man in his youth. But there is an unexplainable security of having the grand old tree bowing its shade before you as the sun scorches. There is peace in knowing you have a 97-year-old pot of wisdom you can feed your mind on. There is beauty in being able to refer in the flesh to the one man who can tell the history of our freedom. Today, we may be forced to put his body to rest, but his story will forever blossom from the ground he called home. We shall celebrate him every time we speak of freedom, each time we call for unity. Every time this nation in its youth seeks guidance, we shall remember in glory the hero without a cape, the soldier armed with love and the spirit of millions. We shall remember our super king, our old man, ichikolwa cha chalo cha Zambia, omuntu wafyelwe n'okufuila mu maboko ya mushili Yesu, omuntu wavyele embuto shachitemwiko pa muntu wonse, uwasakamene emitundu shonse, uwaikalile okulanda eshiwilimo pa bantu bakwe. One Zambia, one nation. It is at this time we reflect as a people, as a nation. Reflect on the dream that impregnated Dr. Kaunda till he labored to birth our freedom, to risk his life that his survivors were free, that his survivors lived in love and unity. Today we are the survivors. Today we bear the responsibility of living his dream and to raise it some more, to carry Africa on our shoulders, to carry Zambia in our hearts as one people, to soar with grace, with strength, and with the majesty of the African eagle. Go well, in power, in glory, and in peace. To you, with love, Super Kane.
Well. I guess that it's time for me to start, and I'm wondering whether anyone is going to talk to me or I should just get started. But I would like to thank Pastor Austin and the entire team that has put this program together. It's quite a moment for us in Zambia. And let me start by, first of all, on behalf of my own family and on behalf of our Victory Ministries, I continue to send our deepest condolences to the family of the Kaundas and also to the president of this country and to the people of Zambia on this gigantic loss of a name that has gone globally as a representation of discipline, representation of character and leadership, and also a representation of a consistent leader and a father of our nation. So I just wanted to start from there today, and I'm going to speak about the life of Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, the implications of his death, the far-reaching impact of his life on the very culture and the life of our nation, Zambia. and I pray that somebody can get inspired, not just for tonight, but for the rest of your life. There are not many of his type, and they don't come every day. They come once in a lifetime, once in a generation. You get a Kaunda to live amongst you. And for some unknown reason, God chose that Dr. Kaunda be born a Zambian, even more warmly for me as I speak, be born in Chinsali, where I come from. So obviously we have amongst us one of Africa's greatest coming from amongst us, speaking our own language and impacting the globe. I'm going to ask that in my discussion, you understand that I'm going to deal with this tribute to Dr. Kenneth Kaunda in three ways. First of all, I'm going to deal with my personal connection and personal reflections from a family point of view, to Dr. Kenneth Kaunda. Then I'm going to talk about the spiritual aspect that he has brought upon this country that we now call a Christian nation, and how his Christian values are inculcated in him by his father, his late father, David Kaunda, who was a missionary at Lubwa Mission in Chinsali. Then from the church, I'm going to talk about the political side, which mostly I'm going to concentrate more on the democratic process of 1991 that brought about multipartism and his role and his part in that, and also insist that history serves him a little fairer than it has in terms of his contribution to the reintroduction of multipartism in our country. So I'm going to go there today because I think that if we do not properly set out history, somebody's going to write it for us, and it's going to put Dr. Kaunda in a slot he does not belong, as we understand that it takes two to tango. And many African countries that refuse to do what Dr. Kaunda actually did, and that is to democratize this country. That in itself, speaks of him as a man who at heart wanted not only peace, but a democratic nation in which Zambians could participate fully. But before I get into those three areas, allow me to introduce this discussion by stating a fact. And I hope that I can, premise my discussion on this. First of all, it's an era without the founding fathers of our nation, an era of a generation which was not part of the struggle for independence. This generation, we have a generation succumb, but he is not only Zambian, but he is representing Africa as the last of those that brought our freedom. He belonged to a long line of departed freedom fighters, the likes of Harry Nkumbula, Simon Mwansa-Kapwepwe, Kwame Nkrumah, Mzee Kenyatta, Julius Nyerere, Samora Machel, and Nelson Mandela. So I want to state that the baton has finally been passed on to the new generation. While the voice of the last generation has now gone silent, there is one demand, and this is what I wanted to say before I get into my discussion. There's one demand placed upon us. Whatever we do, we must never undo what our forefathers and founding fathers did for us. We must never undo it. And that is to bring, they brought to us freedom. And we must never surrender this freedom. Our new African leaders must never, ever think of selling out and recolonizing ourselves, not politically, not economically, and never to sell our birthright for a morsel of bread. Never. This is the least that we can do to honor all our fallen heroes. I just thought I needed to put that down there. I wrote those thoughts because I want all of us to understand the death of Dr. Kenneth Kaunda signifies the change of era. It's now a new era of Zambians, and we can only draw from the character, the discipline, and the strength of the last generation of generals that was represented by the last soldier in Kenneth David Kaunda. And therefore, we are on our own now, but we have already been prepared for this season. And that is what I want to talk about. Allow me to eulogize the life of this great son of Africa, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda. I speak about him today, not just as a politician or a Zambian watching him from afar. Dr. Kenneth Kaunda comes from Chinsali, as I've already said. My family and the Kaunda family have always been very, very close. My father worked closely with Dr. Kenneth Kaunda. Dr. Kenneth Kaunda lived in our own house for 6 months during the time for the struggle of independence. And I also need to clarify now that the old man is gone home. There has been a posting, I think maybe it's no longer there now, on the BBC website where it insinuated that Nevas Mumba was a son of Dr. Kenneth Kaunda. Unfortunately, that went out, and it's all over the place in Zambia that Dr. Mumba is a son of Dr. Kenneth Kaunda. That is not true, but we were very close. He loved me dearly. My vice presidency, I didn't know until after I was vice president, was he sat down with President Mwanawasa, and President Mwanawasa asked him what did he need to do in order to bring unity across the nation at that time. And I understand that Dr. Kaunda gave him my name. So there are all these things that people thought, because of all those things, that he was my father. But no, he went to Lubwa Mission. My mother is from Lubwa as well. My father is from Chinsali. And I know that throughout the years, as I preached the gospel, he had always been there for me and for my family. And therefore, this loss is not just a national loss, it's also a personal loss for the Mumba family. We pray that the Kaunda family will continue to carry the legacy of the old man. And that's a legacy of a man who looked after his family with great responsibility. And now the Bible says, you shall know them by their fruit. Many people can accuse Dr. Kaunda of many mistakes, and I must be quick to say that Dr. Kaunda was not an angel, but you can only know him by his fruit. When you look at his children, he had many children, but these children are not typical children of a president. Today, when a child is a child of a president, there are so many things that go with that kind of character. Arrogance, even just no character that can actually say that he can be a role model, because they are spoiled. They use the position to advance themselves, to harass others, and to make money. But the Kaunda children lived amongst us, went to the same schools we went to. He didn't send them out of the country. They went to the same schools we went to. They faced the same challenges we faced. Even after he left office, they're just amongst us as citizens, trying to push and struggle like all of us. And therefore, he demonstrated that it was important to bring up the children in the fear of God and not to make them become a pain to the citizens because they belong to the first family. And we've not given enough credit to the children of Dr. Kenneth Kaunda. But I think that of all the first family children, I think the Kaundas have demonstrated a resilience and a commitment to their country without asking for too much from this country. But they know that they sacrificed their father and gave him up so that all of us can have a piece of him, and yet denied them a father for so many years. They show no bitterness for that, but they celebrate the fact that Zambia is free and that their father had a part to play. So I face this funeral myself, not as an institution that has died, but as a father to me, family, someone who knew me personally and I knew him personally, somebody who spoke into my life when many people said to me, a pastor cannot be involved in politics. He called me home and said, if there's anything Zambia needs, it's Christianity in the governance system of our country. He says there are no better values by which to govern a nation, but through the values of Christianity, of love. Love your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And, so he kept going about these eternal godly values of love, forgiveness, inclusiveness. So he, to me, represents a personal touch of a man who had a direct impact in my life, and I'll forever honor him and forever remember him as a man that not only gave me education as a Zambian, but also who was involved in my life. And when my son got married, my firstborn, in 2012, Dr. Kaunda came out and he was the master, he was the guest of honor, but he said some things that I'll cherish for the rest of my life over my son, Shumuel Mumba. So that's from the personal point of view, so that you understand that as I eulogize him, there is that personal emotional touch that if I lose it in my discussion with you, I'm coming from there. It's not a political death to me. It's a death of a man that has left an impact in our nation and around the globe. I want to also deal with a subject that has not really been dealt with fairly. Zambia in 1991 was declared a Christian nation by Dr. Frederick Chiluba, the president of the MMD and the president of the country at that time. Obviously, the situation was, we thank God for President Chiluba for declaring Zambia as a Christian nation, and we will never take away that credit from Dr. Chiluba. But I want the Zambians to write the history well and properly. What President Chiluba did in 1991 was to declare Zambia a Christian nation. In other words, he did not make it a Christian nation. He declared that it was indeed a Christian nation. If it had not been a Christian nation at the time of declaration, there could have been a revolt from the country, from the Muslims or the pagans, sorry for using that word, to demonstrate and say, no, why declare us Christian when we are not? But there was a total agreement in the nation that what President Chiluba had done was a true reflection of the culture and the life of Zambia. It was a Christian nation. What we forget is that how did it become a Christian nation? It was because President Kenneth Kaunda used Christian values of love, perpetuation of peace, forgiveness, embracing others as a way of bringing this country about. Remember, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda was a son of a reverend. He grew up under the tenets of the Christian faith at Luba Mission. He himself was a good preacher. In his book, A Letter to My Children, you see that in that book, he literally preaches and shows you his depth of commitment to the Lord Jesus Christ. So I think that it is important for the Zambians to write the history correctly, that because of the Christian values and the tenets upon which Dr. Kaunda handled this country up to 1991, Zambia became naturally a Christian nation to the extent that President Chiluba had the comfort to declare it so. I must also confess that my ministry, my church organization, grew immensely. In fact, under President Kaunda's leadership. That's when Victory Ministries was established in 1980, and it grew, to an international ministry under the leadership of Dr. Kenneth Kaunda. And therefore, it is important for us to give Dr. Kaunda the credit that is due to him. President Chiluba declared Zambia Christian Nation a great feat because he now took it to another level. But we thank God for President Kaunda, who prepared this nation along Christian values, that we did certain things under his leadership. He called it humanism, because of the influence that was there from the East at the time. But if you look at the virtues that he was using of respect, sympathy, during those times of President Kaunda, there was a lot of sympathy when you see a cortege of a body of the dead moving, being driven by. We all stood at attention. We didn't know who was in the coffin. The vehicles stopped. Only those vehicles that were going to the graveyard or carrying the corpse would be moving. And all of us alongside the road who stood without anybody telling us to stand. And it was a show of the character of who Zambians are. When there was provocation against our country to go for war, to the extent that Ian Smith actually bombed State House because of Nkomo, who was there. And yet, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, who had equal equipment almost to that which Zimbabwe had, military equipment, because we all inherited it from the British, he refused to retaliate. They came and bombed our bridges. He refused to retaliate. They did everything to provoke us. But Kenneth Kaunda would rather suffer loss than subject the Zambian people to become one of those riotous nations and nations that are at war. So we can see that these values of Christianity were embedded in his own life, and he moved them and placed them upon us. And this is why Zambia today is a Christian nation. So for me, from where I stand, I salute Dr. Frederick Chiluba for declaring Zambia a Christian nation. But equally, if it was on a scale, it would be almost 50-50 that Dr. Kenneth Kaunda's contribution to making Zambia a Christian nation must never go unmentioned, because it's an amazing contribution that he made. I thought it was important for us to deal with that. The other thing I wish to deal with is basically his contribution to the democratization of Zambia as a Christian nation. But as we eulogize him, let's write the history correctly. That without Kenneth Kaunda taking the stand that he took to reduce his term of office by 2 years and call for an early election, and also to go right ahead and sign the repeal of Article number 4 in 1990 that reintroduced multi-party democracy. If Dr. Kaunda had refused to do that, we would have gone the way of Zimbabwe and many other countries that continued on the path they were on without changing direction. And I'm not saying that, I don't like to make reference to other countries, but they had their own set of values and ideas and how they're running the countries. But all I'm saying is that Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, when there was pressure that this country goes back to multipartyism, he saw it fit, in order to keep the peace that he preached about all the time, he decided that he was going to repeal Article number 4 so that Zambia could revert to a multi-party state, and therefore called an early election that saw him out of office. I think these virtues about Dr. Kenneth Kaunda must not be underestimated. There are very few political leaders that can do what Dr. Kaunda did. And sometimes, because we demonized him for being, as he was being called, a dictator of a one-party state, we didn't see the values that he brought to us as a nation, even to the extent that we praise him today as the father of the nation, the architect of this peaceful nation. But how did this peace evolve? This peace actually evolved out of something that looked erroneous. Number one, prior to 68 and all there, we noticed that Zambia was still, from independence, was a multi-party state. And the problems began in the country because maybe we were young and whatever, and violence now became one of the possible outcomes of our country. The tribes were all doing their own thing. Dr. Kenneth Kaunda decided to go with the wave of the day of creating a one-party system where everybody participates within one political organization to reduce the fighting and the bloodletting so that he unites the country and gives them an opportunity to develop. That was what was in his mind. I consider it, as leader of the movement for multi-party democracy, as an erroneous decision he made. But for the sake of peace, he brought that in so that Zambians could put away their tribes, put away their differences, stop the bloodletting, and concentrate on building the nation. So that's what he did, and I think he meant well. But as we look back now, we think that we believe that the rights of the people to choose what they wanted, to belong to the political organization they wanted, was taken away from the Zambians. That's why in 1990, the demand was placed on President Kaunda to do the right thing and take Zambia back. The good news is that Dr. Kaunda obliged and did that without any shedding of blood, without any resistance. It's that action that we must honor in Dr. Kenneth Kaunda. Now, I speak with authority on this issue because I know it was not easy for Dr. Kaunda to do what he did. It was not easy at all to give up power. It was not easy at all to revert to multipartism at the risk of him losing the presidency. The reason I'm saying I am well informed about this is because at that time in 1990, I was a very young preacher having a gospel crusade in Woodland Stadium. And it was in September of 1990, I believe. And I was just finishing a huge crusade there when the Secretary to Cabinet at that time, I think it was Mr. Manyema, came to me after I preached and said, the president would like to have a word with you tomorrow at 9 o'clock the following day. So I was a bit surprised, but Dr. Kaunda's requests sometimes were surprising. When you're not expecting it, then he calls you. So I went there early in the morning, or rather at 9 o'clock, and he sat in his chair a bit despondent. Then he roared it out to say that there is pressure in the nation that will revert to multipartism. I know that God placed me here, but he also placed me here to play a role. I've called you to pray for me. I know you are young, but like he used to say, but I know the Spirit of the Lord is upon you, he said. And that's why I've called you to pray for me, that I may make this decision and God to give me strength to proceed with repealing Article number 4. At that time, I didn't even know what he was talking about when he talked about Article number 4 because I was not involved in the political process. But, you know, he came down from his chair. He came where I was sitting. We both knelt down and prayed for him and prayed for the country and for strength for him to make that decision. As I was driving back to Kitwe, back where I lived, we turned on the radio. Dr. Kaunda was at Mulungushi Hall announcing that the country is now reverting to a multi-party state. But I bring in this issue to say that it was not as easy as people put it. It's because they are not the ones who were there, but I saw it in his face. I saw what he was battling with. And I could also see that he knew that by taking that decision, he was getting himself out of office. And that's exactly what happened. So the point I want to make here, like I made over the Christianity that is in this country and the culture that we now enjoy of a Christian culture, I want to say in the same way, there would have been no multi-party system of government coming back if Dr. Kaunda had not made that decision to agree. It could have come maybe later, but at least not at that time. And Kenneth Kaunda would have continued to be president for another 2 years. Who knows what could have happened as a result of that 2 years? He probably could have continued as president, as they have continued in Tanzania, as they have continued in Namibia, as they have continued in Zimbabwe. Zambia would still be under unique, but President Kaunda decided to do the right thing. This history must be written correctly. because he is looked at as a villain who was a dictator and leader of a one-party state of government. But we forget that he decided to agree with a lot of people in this country, led by Frederick Chiluba, to democratize this country. And that is why, if you remember, in South Africa, when Nelson Mandela took over as president, and there was an award that was given, a Nobel Peace Prize that was given to Nelson Mandela for his role of fighting for peace for South Africa, they gave 50% to the former president of South Africa, de Klerk, and they honored him as well as much as they honored Nelson Mandela. Now that could have looked like wrong, but what they're saying is that de Klerk, unlike Vorster and the others who were before him, he's the one who said, you know what, we've got to do the right thing and give freedom to the black people in South Africa. So they honored him for being the instrument to bring about the change. It's the same thing with Dr. Kenneth Kaunda. He is as much of a significant part of history in the recreation of multipartyism in this country as Dr. Frederick Chiluba and the movement for multi-party democracy. And I thought that it was important for us to write this history properly and ensure that we give honor to whom honor is due. Now, on the international stage, I believe, and I want to say this passionately to Zambia and all those that live in other parts of the world, I think it is important for us to remember that there has never been in the history of this country or on the continent a former president dying and almost the entire SADC region declares days of national mourning, some as much as 14 days like South Africa. Now, what does that symbolize? I want to appeal to the Zambian people that we probably don't know what we have in our hands. Our colleagues around us understand that this man was bigger than life. He was bigger than Zambia. Without him, some of them would have had their independence delayed. But he sacrificed this country in order to get South Africa free, in order to get Zimbabwe free, in order to get Mozambique free, in order to get Angola free, Namibia free. He sacrificed everything we had. History tells us we lost about $20 billion in the freedom fighters, in looking after freedom fighters and protecting them, and also in the destruction of our infrastructure by both South Africa and Southern Rhodesia at that time. We paid a high price, but he stood tall until we delivered our colleagues around us. Dr. Kenneth Kaunda said, Zambia is not free until all our neighbors are free. He lived up to that legacy and made it happen. It is us Zambians who must celebrate this life. It is us Zambians who must popularize this name so that out of this name we can be characterized as a country that has played a pivotal role in creating the current SADC region. How do we do that? We must honor Dr. Kenneth David Kaunda in the manner that our friends in the United States honored Martin Luther King Jr., like our friends in India honored Mahatma Gandhi, like our friends in South Africa honored Nelson Mandela. We must do the same here. In all those countries have honored their greats who brought about freedom through peaceful means, with days in which they commemorate those activities. So today, I would like to celebrate this great name by asking all of us in Zambia not to lose this legacy. And the best way not to lose it is to ensure that we place this name and attach it to a day so that our future generations will not forget where they have come from. The biggest way, I want to say, let's rewrite our history. Let's sing the true song about this great son of Africa, popularize it to the world, and let Zambia be known as the Kaunda Nation, a peaceful loving nation, a united nation. And Zambia now looks for leadership that can truly emulate the last president as a Christian leader leading a Christian nation that he facilitated in creating. And I'm so glad to be a Zambian, and I'm also glad to be running for president in a country that is Christian now because of the labors of this great man. I think for now, I would like to say, may the Lord keep his servant safely in his bosom until that day when we shall all gather together around the throne of God. Farewell, Dr. Kenneth David Kaunda. We shall continue to sing your song and your legacy. Shalom.
All men are great, none greater than another. But some men surrender, while others fight and duck for cover. None could be said to be more valiant than another, but surrender is only seen as great if for a friend, lover, or brother. Graciously his white handkerchief waves as a sign of surrender, not to defeat, but to a fight like no other. Diligently he gave his life to serve all the people. Won the fight for independence. We are free, therefore there will be no sequel. Proudly we sing our national anthem. What a powerful song. Rightfully, like his fellow legendary African giants, he will continue to receive his accolades long after his transition. May your soul rest in peace, Dr. Kenneth David Kaunda.
We in Zambia are peaceful people, peace-loving. I challenge anyone to say today here that Zambia is a warmongering nation. We have done all these things in search of peace, but it has to be genuine peace, based on sincere, genuine majority rule. Zambians will be born out of our blood.
TIYENDE PAMODZI DIMTIMA UMODZI TIYENDE PAMODZI DIMTIMA UMODZI TIYENDE DIMTIMA UMODZI Atate Kaunda tiza kuyewani Atate Kaunda tiza kuyewani Atate Kaunda tiza kuyewani Kumbulani mwa mutendere. You fought for the freedom of Zambia, let us free from our oppressor's hand. So now we can stand and sing for Zambia, proud and free. The history of Africa cannot be complete without your love for her freedom. You inspired hope to all. A humble teacher, you were. TIYENDE PAMODZI DIMTIMA UMODZI TIYENDE PAMODZI DIMTIMA UMODZI TIYENDE PAMODZI DIMTIMA UMODZI TIYENDE DIMTIMA UMODZI Atate Kaunda tiza kuyewani Atate Kaunda tiza kuyewani Atate Kaunda tiza kuyewani Kumbulani mwa mutendere. Chikundi chanu demonstrated by bringing us together. Your leadership uniting the nation, diverse languages and your one flag. You preach unity to all mankind. Here you preach freedom to all, and for this vision you are willing to die. For the struggle you fought for the cause. Oh, we'll remember you as a father of a nation. We'll remember you as we sing TIYENDE PAMODZI DIMTIMA UMODZI TIYENDE PAMODZI DIMTIMA UMODZI TIYENDE DIMTIMA UMODZI Atate Kaunda Tiza Kuyewani Atate Kaunda Tiza Kuyewani Atate Kaunda Tiza Kuyewani Pumulani Mwamutendere Atate TIYENDE Atate TIYENDE
Stand and sing of Zambia, proud and free, land of work and joy in unity, victors in the struggle for the right. We've won freedom's fight, oh, one, strong and free. Africa is our motherland, fashioned with and blessed by God's good hands. Let us all people join as one, brothers under the sun. Oh, one, strong and free.